Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Maddie's Rap with author Matt D. Talford. Author and storyteller Matt D. Talford, because y'all know especially when you tune into my lives, you know that I tell stories too, and I tell them on the video sometime too as well. But anyway, let me get on to tonight's topic, which is all about Saturn. Now, if you are new to my channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, you will hit that subscribe button so that you can be entertained, educated, uplifted, and inspired, which is what I do on this channel. Okay. And if you are a returning subscriber, slow down, Matt. Welcome back. Okay. Welcome back. You guys know I appreciate you, and you know the depths of my love for each and every one of you. You guys have been with me since I started doing this whole Maddie's Rap thing a whole lot of years ago. Okay. Maddie's Rap actually officially kind of kicked off in 2019, but I've been doing content on this channel since about 20, actually dating back to 2015, but I kind of got serious with it in 2017. And then 2019 was Maddie's Rap, and the rest is history. A lot of you have been with me since day one. A lot of you have been with me since the first episode of Maddie's Rap, and I greatly, truly appreciate and value each and every one of you. Now, tonight's topic is about Saturn. Your Saturn restrictions in your birth chart are there to protect you. Now, for those of you who are not aware, I did a deep dive on Saturn and talking about how Saturn illustrates what our biggest challenges are going to be in life and how we can overcome them. I did a deep dive on that. It went a little over 2 hours. And for those of you that were not a part of that live stream on Saturday, I want to say Saturday was what, the 10th? I think Saturday was the 10th. Yeah, Saturday was the 10th. So for those of you that were, or was it? Yeah, Saturday the 10th. For those of you that were not there on Saturday the 10th of February 2024, there will be a link in the description box below where you can click that and watch the replay. Okay. Fascinating. If you do not truly understand Saturn and you truly do not understand why you have the weaknesses that you have and how to best overcome them, you want to watch that video. And shout out to those of you who have been hitting me up personally to tell me that, hey, Matt, you know what? I feel like my whole life has turned around already since you did that live stream. I had somebody come to me today and said, hey, you know what? I was in a situation in a training class where I felt like I was not being heard, and you're talking to me about that Saturn, and me looking at this young lady had Saturn in the seventh house, and which means that, hey, she's going to be restricted in the area of partnerships. This person went back and said, hey, you know what? I remembered what you said and how you're supposed to use that energy to illustrate that you have learned your lessons. And this particular person, I won't give any names away, but this person was a Saturn and Gemini in the seventh house. So she took that and ran with it. She said, you know what? Matt said, if my Saturn's in Gemini, I'm supposed to be using my voice. I'm supposed to be communicating. And that person took that and ran with it. And she said, you know what? He says Saturn or Gemini is the student. Sagittarius on the opposite side of the spectrum or the axis is the teacher. So if I'm supposed to be using Gemini energy, which is communication, I need to be asking questions. So where this person in the past would have just not said anything and just chinned it up and internalized it, she said she got a huge victory because went outside, she took a break. She said, hey guys, I'll be right back. I got to go to the ladies' room. I'll be back. She looked in the mirror. She said, hey, use your voice. This is a partnership uh, exercise, if you will. This is an exercise in partnership. And I can leave here and act like the old me, or I can apply what I learned in that Saturn video that Matt did on Saturday and use my voice. And she went out there and she used her voice. And she said, I got a huge win out of that. Not only were the questions that I asked, um, not only did the questions I asked help me to be understood, but they also set me up for some very lucrative partnerships down the road. So thank you for that feedback. You know who you are. Thank you so much. As a content creator that breaks down topics that aren't spoken about every day, it is always a blessing when you guys come back and tell me that something I said was worth something, okay? Because when you're sitting here sometimes doubt can creep in. You're like, okay, I'm not getting a lot of comments in the comment section, not getting a lot of questions. Anyway, y'all, I'm rambling. Let me get on to the tonight's topic. Again, if you have not seen that video, take your time with it, carve out some space, carve out about 2 hours and change, get your notepad and a pencil out, and or pen, get a notebook and a pen out and take notes and go through me with that. Go through that deep dive with me and take notes, because I promise you it's going to be one of the most beneficial videos you've ever seen. Now, tonight's video is a follow-up on that. Saturn not only shows us where our biggest weaknesses are, where our biggest challenges are, and how to overcome them. What we learn is that the house that we're restricted in by Saturn is actually there to protect us. And here's how that works. If you think about it, in the area where you're restricted by Saturn, if you were to not have those restrictions, let me say this a different way, y'all, because I don't want this to be a super long video. Saturn restricts us to protect us from us. Saturn restricts us to protect us from us. Okay. How does that work? That works like this. If you were not restricted in that area, you could quite easily be presented with the things that come with that particular house at the wrong time, at a time where you're not ready yet, at a time where you're not mature enough to understand what is the difference between the right decision and the wrong decision. Okay. What is going to give me a reward versus what is going to cause me pain? If you are not mature enough yet to understand that, it could serve to knock you off the purpose for which you came to this planet. It could serve to knock you off the purpose for which you incarnated. Okay. And someone in that live video asked me about doing a video on the North Node. And I'm absolutely going to do a video on the North Node explaining how Saturn actually works in conjunction with your North Node, how your Saturn placement works in conjunction with your North Node, which is your soul's destiny. Your Jupiter, pretty much all of your placements in your natal chart help to serve the purpose that is the reason that you incarnated, which can be found in the knowing what the sign of your North Node is and the house. Okay, but that's a story for another day. Saturn actually helps you with that, but guess what? If Saturn did not restrict you, you could be knocked off that path, and you basically lived a life that where you came here to fulfill one purpose, but you didn't do it. So it would be like going to school and going to school for a certain curriculum and being distracted by something that has nothing to do with what you came to school to learn. And then you leave school not having learned what you came there to learn and not having accomplished what you came there to accomplish. And many people within the spiritual community call Earth school. A lot of us call Earth school because you come here to learn, you come here for soul growth. And I did a video on that too. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description box. So, Matthew, how does Saturn's restrictions in our birth chart protect us? That's a great question. I'm going to show you right now. So, for those of you who were on that live stream with me on Saturday, and again, today's Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. So, this would have been about 4 days ago. For those of you that were on that live stream with me, you remember this chart because I brought it up. So, I'm going to go through these houses really quick. And then if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below the video. Okay. Now, and again, this is not a recap of that video. You guys, please watch that video as a prerequisite. If you do not understand Saturn, if you do not understand the different constellations and their energies, and if you are also called signs, if you don't understand the signs or the constellations and their energies, how their energies affect us, how those energies show up, and if you don't understand what those different astrological houses are, I strongly recommend that you stop here and go and watch that video and come back. Now, first house. Let's see if I can zoom in on this, okay? And let me make sure I'm sharing this to the screen just to make sure I got it there. Okay, good. It's there. The first house is the house of self, okay? If your Saturn is in the first house, as you can see here, it is self-awareness, personality, mask, identity, self-image, blah, blah, blah. And I'm reminded of a story of a friend of mine who has a Saturn in the first house, and some of the things that person shared with me with regards to what they saw in a past life regression. So this is a perfect example of how Saturn restricting our first house, or Saturn in the first house, helps to protect us. Okay, if you have Saturn in the first house, then you are going to be somewhat restricted in the area of self. You're going to be held back a little bit. Now, you have to again take that sign, whatever that Saturn sign is, and use that energy to help you to overcome that challenge. Okay. But that restriction is there to protect you early on. Now, in that video, I talked about how long it takes Saturn to complete a cycle. You're born, let's say you're born in the year 2000. Okay. Let's say you're born in November of 2000. Well, guess what? It's going to take Saturn until somewhere around 2026, 2027, 2028, somewhere around there for Saturn to come back to whatever sign Saturn was in when you were born. So if you were born with Saturn in Capricorn, it's going to take about 26, 27, 28 years for Saturn to come back to your natal sign. That's what's called the Saturn return. Okay. Now, up until that point, you are learning. And a lot of people, especially people who are my age, which I won't tell you on here, but a lot of people will tell you that they didn't know anything in their first 20, 25 years of life. They didn't really start to figure things out until they hit that first Saturn return. So in the same way that you would protect a child from hurting themselves or doing something that would hurt themselves when they're too young to, for example, you don't take a child that just learned how to walk and put them on a motorbike. You don't do it. That child would hurt themselves. That you got to take them through progressions. Okay. You just learned how to walk. Hey, let's put you on a tricycle in year whatever. Okay. Now you know how to ride a tricycle. Let's put you on a bicycle. Let's put the training wheels on. Okay. You know how to ride it with the training wheels on. I'm going to hold the seat for you. Take the training wheels off. You're going to learn how to steady yourself. Okay. Now you know how to ride a bicycle. Maybe you fell one or two times. And now you know you've learned how to steady yourself through those falls. It's the same way with life. Okay. Saturn is there to restrict you, to also protect you, in addition to what we talked about in that live stream. So when you're getting back to the first house, with the first house being the house of self, the house of how we appear, the first house is called the ascendant, the rising sign, and it is pretty much how we appear. Now, if your Saturn is in the first house, then you are probably going to be held back a little bit with regards to your self-image. How can that help you? How can that help you? It can help you in this area. If you were not restricted by Saturn in that first house and you're supposed to be, or if Saturn didn't restrict you in the first house, if Saturn's restricting you in the first house, then there's something that passed that held over from a previous lifetime where you messed up in the area of the first house, and now you need to be held back to make sure that you correct whatever that mistake was or whatever that behavior was that got you landed with Saturn in the first house to begin with. Okay. So I'm keeping those cookies away from you because the last time I'll let you have free access to the cookies, you ate the whole jar and got sick. Okay. So now I'm going to restrict you from having those cookies. You're going to go and read some books that teach you about the effects of sugar on the body, blase, 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 blah. Okay. Calories, all of that. Once you learn that and you've illustrated and demonstrated that you've learned it, then I'm going to free you up to go and have those cookies. Because guess what? Now I can observe you and say, oh, you know what? They learned their lesson. They only ate 2 cookies this time instead of eating the whole jar. Okay. Kind of the same way with Saturn. So if Saturn's in your first house, then there's something about your appearance, the way you appear to the world, the way your image of self that was perhaps negatively portrayed, came across in a way that could have harmed you or harmed others in a previous lifetime. So now you're being restricted in the first house. In the example of this one person said that they did something that was not good to themselves, okay, in a previous lifetime, and they saw that in their what do you call it, in their past life regression. This person did a past life regression. So they had to be restricted in the first house to protect them. Hey, you know what? We're going to make sure that you are seeing yourself in the right light. We're going to protect you in the area of the first house. Okay. And then whatever that sign is, that is the energy that you're going to use in order to overcome the challenges that you have in the first house. If that Saturn's in Gemini, I keep saying Saturn in Gemini. I'm using that as an example because I'm a Saturn in Gemini. Okay. If that Saturn is in Gemini in the first house, then that tells me that you probably had something to do with that you spoke about yourself that could have harmed you or harmed others in a previous lifetime. So now you are here to learn how to properly present yourself in speech. That's just one example. Okay. So Saturn in the first house, you're being restricted, is protecting you from yourself. Okay. Protecting you from harming yourself in any type of way, anything that will cause you to damage yourself in any way, shape, or form. And that, of course, is going to depend a lot on or the tool you're going to use has to do with the sign. Okay. Now, the second house, if your Saturn is in the second house, what are you being protected from? You're being protected in the area of material possessions, in the area of money, finance, valuables, that sort of thing. Okay. Now, why? What would you be being protected from by your Saturn being in the second house? Perhaps you had problems with the way you looked at money, the way you maybe you mismanaged money in a previous lifetime. So if you're not if your Saturn's not in the second house, or if you're not restricted in that area, you could go out there, and if you've just got access to all the wealth you want, then you could spend that money, or spend those resources in such a way as to knock you off your soul path. Whatever you came here to do, having access to financial wealth, financial gain, that sort of thing, too early can serve to knock you off your path. So you're restricted so that you can get to whatever your sole purpose is for being here. Money at the wrong time, money too early on, money in the midst of that first Saturn return could throw you off the rails. Okay. The way you first house, the way you look at yourself in in the time of that first Saturn return, maybe halfway through that second Saturn return, the way you look at yourself could knock you off your destined path. If you think too highly of yourself, I meant to say that in the first house area, so I'm backtracking. If you think too highly of yourself, that could serve to knock you off your destined path. So let's move on to the third house. Third house is the house of communication. Here it shows as mindset, thinking, speaking, writing style, learning. Okay, interactions with siblings, communication. Communication is the big one. The third house is ruled by the third house is ruled by Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication. So, as I said before, Gemini is a student. If you are restricted in the area of the third house, then you are being protected from speaking in a way that can knock you off your soul path. You're being protected from learning something that could send you down the wrong path and knock you off your destined path. Okay? Those are a couple of examples of third house Saturn restrictions. What are you being protected from? You're being protected from maybe talking too much. You might say something that gets you in trouble and gets you knocked off your soul path. It could be anything. It could be you could talk yourself into a situation that's not good for you, and that puts you on a path that is contrary to what you came here to do. Saturn in the fourth house. Okay. Your Saturn's in the fourth house. What are you being protected from? You're being protected from, because the fourth house is the house of home. I would say that if your Saturn's in the fourth house, it is protecting you from being complacent. Home is where we like to home is where all of our comforts are. That's where we like to just, be there with our families and take care of family and friends and entertain people. Well, maybe your soul's path is to get out. Maybe your soul's path is to get out and do something. Okay? Maybe your soul's path is to get out and do something, and being at home too soon can make you lazy, where you don't go and do what it is you're supposed to do. That's Saturn in the fourth house. Saturn in the fifth house. What is the fifth house? The fifth house is the house of creativity. It's the house of it's what I call our strength. It's where we shine. It's the areas we shine in. Here you can see the examples they give: pleasure, romance, play. If your Saturn's in the fifth house, then that's keeping you from playing too much. Playing too much might get you, and when I say playing too much, I'm talking about playing too much as a kid and playing too much as an adult. Okay, that's the house of romance, the house of procreation. It's ruled by the sun. The sun helps to give life because it gives warmth, and the energy of the sun produces life. So if your Saturn's in the fifth house, you could be restricted from shining too soon. You might have an ego. You might have an ego that needs to get checked. So if your ego's unchecked, then you might go out here and do something that can knock you off your soul path. So Saturn restricts you in the area of creativity, in the area of entertainment, romance, pleasure, that sort of thing. All of those are fifth house things. Again, different astrologers have different things that they play up with regards to the energies of these houses because you see so many things there. For me, I like to say that Saturn is where our biggest strengths are and where we shine. I said Saturn. I'm sorry, y'all. The fifth house is where our biggest strengths are and where we shine. So if your Saturn is in the fifth house, then it's going to hold you back from shining because maybe there's some things that you need to learn to shine in certain areas. But if you're shining too quickly at a young age, at too young an age, and there are things that you're learning, and you're like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, or you might just be into too much pleasure. Well, Saturn is going to be like, nah, we're going to make sure that you don't get any pleasure until you learn to handle your gifts. Okay. So you learn how to properly handle your gifts. It's like teaching your child how to drive a car. You know what? Yeah, you know that car will go 120 miles an hour, but you're not going to let your child get in there and floor it. They don't even know how to handle the vehicle yet. So what are you going to do? You're going to take them in the parking lot and make sure that they understand the power of that gas pedal and that they understand where that brake pedal is and how to properly stop the car. Same thing with Saturn. Okay. Let's move on to the sixth house. The sixth house is, let's move this over so we can see it. The sixth house is ruled by Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, and it is the house of service. I like to call it the house of service. We can see a lot of things here. Analytical, Virgos are analytical. So sixth house energy is about, analyzing. It's about being organized. It's about routines and building and establishing routines. It's about health as well, on any number of things, self improvement, as we can see here. If your Saturn's in the sixth house, then maybe it is restricting you from being of service because guess what? You could get yourself bogged down into serving others too much, and you perhaps came here to do something different. But if you're serving, and that's not to say that you're not going to serve others, because Saturn unlocks once you've learned your lessons. Just like I said, the cookie jar unlocks once you do what you're supposed to do. That Saturn, the things that are in that house unlock fully once you have illustrated and demonstrated maturity with regards to whatever the energy of that house is. So, but if you go too soon, then you could burn out. So maybe Saturn is restricting you in the area of the sixth house because maybe in a previous lifetime you burned yourself out. Maybe in a previous lifetime, you just did too much. You just did too much. So with Saturn being, and you could be restricted in the area, you could have some health problems early on. Guess why Saturn would protect you if you didn't have health problems, but you came here to overcome them so that you could be the world's greatest doctor in some area. Then guess what? Saturn has to hold back your perfect health so that you can learn what it feels like, so that you can learn whatever it is, the area that you're going to be of service in the area of health. You might, and I don't want to throw anything out there. I don't even like talking about health problems, but there could be one area in particular that you struggle with your health until you finally say, hey, you know what? I learned something now on how to overcome this. Now I can go and be of service to help others, which is what you came here to do. But if if you didn't go through that, then you wouldn't even be helping others in that area. Virgos love to help. The sixth house is about service. Okay, let's move on to the seventh house. And this is the example I gave earlier. The seventh house is the house of partnership. It's the house of marriage. Partnership and marriage is what I like to look at primarily. There's some other things listed here, alliances or conflicts, blah, 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 blah. But it's ruled by Libra. Okay, so if your Saturn is in the seventh house, then you're being held back in the area of partnerships. How is that protecting you? Guess what? If you're talking about partnerships like marriage or relationships, well, guess what? If you're not restricted in that area, then you could find yourself in a bad partnership or a bad marriage early on. Before you even figure out who you are, you could end up in a bad situation and never truly do whatever it was that your soul came here to do because you were sitting here trying to dig yourself out of a bad situation or try to figure out, man, how did I get in this marriage with this person? Or a bad business partnership. A bad business partnership. Maybe you came here to do something that requires partnerships later on in life. But if you get in a bad one early on, it could stain you. It could leave a bad taste in your mouth with regards to partnerships. And then you don't end up partnering with who you're supposed to partner with to do whatever this great humanitarian thing is or whatever later on in life. And I'm going to talk more again about this later. I may do it for the live this coming weekend. So I don't know what day you're watching this. But again, today is Wednesday, February 14th. I may do that North Node and how it works with our Saturn in that particular video coming up. There'll be a live stream I'll do it in because I love to interact with you guys real time. So that is how Saturn protects you in with a restriction in the seventh house, a restriction in the eighth house. Scorpionic energy. People love to talk about sex with Scorpio, but it's also about transformation. That's the big one that I like to look at. I like to look at transformation. Now, if Saturn is restricting you in your eighth house, what is it protecting you from? It's kind of protecting you from yourself a little bit. Okay. Why? How do we know that? Well, because Saturn is if Saturn is restricting your eighth house, it's protecting you from getting into physical connections, if you will, with people early on. Maybe maybe getting into these physical connections with people early on can put you in a situation where if you're a guy now you got kids that you got to take care of. If you're a woman, you've got children now that you have to take care of where you were supposed to go and do something later on in life, but now you're raising a family, so you're not free to do what you came to this earth to do. So Saturn's looking and saying, hey, you know what, this person really got it in their last lifetime. If they're allowed to do that this lifetime, they may not do. The chances are good they're not going to do what they came here to do. And we know that they like this area because they showed us that from their last lifetime. All right, we looked at their track record of their last lifetime when we did their soul review when they transitioned the last time. Y'all, this ain't your first time here. This ain't your first time here. Okay, if you think that you only live once, then this ain't your video. Okay, anyway, so Saturn is going to restrict you in that eighth house area so that you don't get involved with people early on that could put you into trouble. Or, God forbid, an enemy comes and puts you in a situation where you catch something that you can't get rid of. And now you're out of here early on. Okay, you're out of here. Your life ends before it took off. That's one. Okay, and then about the area of transformation. The eighth house is the area of transform. Maybe it's not time for you to transform yet because you haven't learned who you are. You haven't gone through any experiences that would allow you to transform. So you're restricted in that area of the eighth house. Now, everyone that I know that has a Saturn that is restricted in the eighth house, you ask them, they all say the same thing. I haven't had a lot of partners in my lifetime. I don't know why. I just never had a lot of partners. Some of these people are gorgeous. You look at them like, yeah, you're lying. But I'm here to tell you that that Saturn in the eighth house is protecting them and from themselves in a sense, because maybe there's something that they're supposed to do later on in life. Maybe there's someone they're supposed to meet later on in life. All of these things play together. So that's Saturn in the eighth house. That is how Saturn protects you if your Saturn's in the eighth house. If your Saturn's in the ninth house, higher education, philosophy, religion, travel. If Saturn's restricting you in your ninth house, what are some things it could protect you from? It could be protecting you from getting involved with organizations. I'm sorry, it could protect you from getting involved with things. If since it's talking about religion, it could protect you from getting involved with things like cults. It could protect you from it could be restricting you or protecting you from taking travels far and wide that would take you away from something that you're supposed to be learning right where you are. There's something you're supposed to be learning right where you are, or there's something that you're supposed to be teaching right where you are. Okay. There is some person that's going to come and help you to expand your mind right where you are. But if your Saturn is in the ninth house and you're not restricted from that, then you can get away from whatever it was that you're supposed to be learning right here. Okay. So Saturn protects you. You could be, if your ninth house is not restricted and you're someone who loved to travel in the previous lifetime, you could go somewhere and just never do what it was you're supposed to do because you're always traveling. You're always gone. Nope. You know what? There's something that you're supposed to learn that requires you to stay put. That's an example of Saturn in the ninth house. Saturn in the 10th house. If your 10th house is restricted by Saturn, then you're being held back from climbing. That's the sign that's ruled, or the 10th house of the house is ruled by Capricorn, the climber. Okay. What are you being held back from? You're being held back from achievement. Your achievement is being restricted. Why? Well, perhaps you overachieved in a previous lifetime and you need to slow down and not work so hard all the time. Maybe you worked yourself to death in a previous lifetime. Serious, y'all. This is how this stuff works. Maybe you worked yourself to death in a previous lifetime. So it's like, hey, you know what? We can't have this person leaving before they finish whatever their purpose is to incarnate, or what their purpose was for coming to this earth. And we know that they have a spirit of achievement. They want to achieve, they want to climb. So we're going to restrict them and hold them back so they don't overwork themselves. By restricting them, they're going to learn how to pace themselves. Once that 10th house is unlocked, then they can achieve in a refined area. In a refined area. So they're not all over the place doing this, doing this, doing this, doing this. We know a lot of Capricorns have a lot of irons and a lot of fires. That's the energy of the Capricorn. Virgo's a lot like it. Taurus is to a degree, to a lesser degree, but all of the earth signs are about grinding, okay? Taurus to a lesser degree, but Virgo, Capricorn, they're always on the grind. They're always on the grind. So maybe you're being protected from overworking yourself. Maybe you're being protected from climbing in a particular company where maybe the senior management or senior level directorship or whatever is corrupt. So maybe you're being protected from that. These restrictions protect us they protect us and keep us on our path. They protect us from going off the rails. They protect us from going off the rails. Okay. So maybe it's just not time for you to achieve yet. That's how that works. If your Saturn's in the 11th house, you're being restricted in the area of humanitarian service, group involvement, clubs, collective endeavors, humanitarian ideals, global awareness. This was an example that came to me after the live last week. And I was like, darn it, I wish I had thought about that then. I'm going to use it right now. The 11th house is the house of the humanitarian. It's ruled by Aquarius. Aquarius is what? The rebel. Aquarius rebels against the rules. Aquarius bucks against the system if the system does not serve the greater good. Well, if your Saturn is in the 11th house, if you're restricted in the area of the 11th house, it could be protecting you from joining the wrong type of group. It could be protecting you from joining a group that wants to rebel in ways that are not healthy, in ways that could get people killed or thrown in jail, or get people landed on some terror watch list. See what I'm saying? People who if low vibrational 11th house energy can have you joining foreign organizations. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So maybe you're being restricted in that area because maybe that's exactly what maybe you got distracted in your last lifetime and you were like, hey, you know what? I want to go help these people. I want to go help these people. And it may not be that extreme. It could be again that you didn't do something for self or something to build yourself because you were too busy helping others. And it's something that you are supposed to learn to make you a better humanitarian, but you don't learn it if you are allowed to go and join all these different groups. That's probably a better example. I gave the extreme one, but that's real. That's very real too. That is very real too. That probably went more with last week's video where I talked about the contrast of, how what your greatest weakness is and how Saturn restriction helps you to strengthen that by using the energy of the sign, and also how the enemy attacks you in that same house area. Okay. So that extreme example probably went more with what I talked about in the live last Saturday. So anyway, that's Saturn in the 11th. If you're restricted in the 11th house, it is keeping you it's keeping your plane grounded for a little bit. It's keeping, and I know I said plane grounded, that kind of goes with the 9th house as well. But in the 11th house, you want to be a humanitarian. Nah, we need you to focus here right now and learn what it is that you need to learn properly to become a humanitarian. If we let you out there too early, you might go out here and do something humanitarian, but it's not necessarily what you came here to do. Okay. Or you might go out here and rebel against the very people that you should be serving later on. All right. So we don't know. These things play out differently for different people. I'm just here to give you some examples. All right. And finally, the 12th house, which is ruled by Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune, the planet of dreams, the planet of the subconscious, the energy of the subconscious. The 12th house is the house I like to call the connection to the ancestral realm, the connection to the spirit realm. Pisces, Neptune, that's very spiritual energy. If you are restricted in the area of the 12th house, then that is so that you can focus more on physical things, more on earthly things, more on things that are not necessarily so ethereal. Okay. You're being protected from being too ethereal too soon. You're being protected from yourself. A lot of people that have 12th house placements, they can find themselves going down the path of substance abuse, escapism. Pardon me, escapism. Well, if your Saturn is restricted in the 12th house, it's actually protecting you from your own subconscious. It's protecting you from perhaps getting involved with uh, the wrong, I shouldn't say wrong, but getting involved with spirituality in a way that is not going to be beneficial to you. It could keep you from going exactly where it could keep you from being spiritual in the right way. Maybe you're supposed to be using that spiritual 12th house type energy to help others, and so you're restricted in that 12th house until you actually illustrate that you've learned mastery over yourself and your own mind and your own subconscious, so then that you can go out and go help someone. You're being restricted from dreaming because being too dreamy perhaps keeps you from being grounded and doing something that you're supposed to be doing that can help to feed those dreams later. Hey, let me show you what the steps are that you need to take in order to make your dreams come true. Well, if you get into the dream world too soon, then you lose that connection to the tangible side of it. All right, that's yin yang energy, spirit, flesh, feminine, masculine. Okay. All right, so that is pretty much a quick rundown of how Saturn protects us. Okay, I'm gonna close this and I'm gonna get ready to end this video. Let me stop the screen. If you guys got any questions, leave them in the comments. In the comments below, let me know what you think of this video. Again, Saturn restrictions in your birth chart, believe it or not, are there to protect you. They are there to protect you. They're there to protect you from messing up. They're there to protect you from uh, anything in that specific house that would derail you from doing what it was that you came here to this life to do. Okay, so that's all I got for you tonight. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, and again, you like being entertained, educated, uplifted, inspired, go ahead. Sorry, I got a distraction there. Go ahead. I should have turned my phone to airplane mode. I normally do that, but I didn't do it this time. But anyway, you like you like being entertained, uplifted, inspired, motivated, educated. Hit that hit that subscribe button. Y'all can y'all tell I've had a long day? Okay. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn your notification bell to all so that you'll be notified when I upload new content. And I'll end this video like I end them all. Tell someone that you love them and mean it. How do you mean it? You have to show it. Love is a verb. It is a noun as well, but when we focus on the verb, the noun always takes care of itself. Peace, family.